What you're looking at and just heard is a Link coin-operated piano built in 1913 by the Link Piano Company, Binghamton, New York, which is what this story is about. Now, the piano itself came from the Shaft Piano Company in 1910. It laid in a warehouse while the owners were being reorganized into the Link Piano Company, and the actual pipes and player mechanism were all installed in 1913. We know this from the serial numbers. This is about the Link Piano Company, Binghamton, New York, on Water Street, right down the street from TechWorks. The Link Piano Company originated around the turn of the last century by two fellows named Harris, who owned a clothing store, and they must have seen a Wurlitzer or a Peerless coin-operated piano early in the game and figured, hey, that would be a good business to get into. So they went up to St. Johnsville, where Peerless was, and they hired a fellow named Goulman who knew how to build this stuff. And their first product was this self-playing xylophone. There's only one of them left in a collection. It was not a success, because who wants to listen to a xylophone banging away all day, you know? But there's the one advertising picture that exists of it, and it laid the groundwork for the xylophones that were in many, many coin-operated pianos later on. We'll see more of that later. Another product that they made was the Style M, which is a piano without a keyboard. It's a cabinet piano, and that was fairly popular. There is the only existing Style M that was in an auction back in the 70s in Nashville, I think. And where that has gotten to now, no one knows. But that's an automatic musical company Style M from around 1905. Notice it has pipes. Now, here's an interesting product Automatic Musical Company made. That is a mandolin piano. It's a piano identical to the one here as far as the piano goes, but inside the glass you can see a mechanism that imitates a mandolin. unlike the mandolin rails that the later pianos had, which we'll show you. Now note under the keyboard there is a big box. That's where the roll goes. And that was a problem for Automatic pretty soon because Peerless had a patent on it and they felt that Automatic infringed. They sued and won, and between that and the panic of 1907, Automatic was in big financial trouble, and by 1910 they were closed down. They bought pianos from Hadorf in Rockford, Illinois. Well, pianos were shipped to Binghamton for conversion to automatics by Automatic, who made the mechanisms. They weren't paid for, the whole operation shut down, and Schaff sent Mr. Link to Binghamton to see what he could do about getting Schaff's money back. And he realized, here's a good opportunity. We just got to straighten out the patent infringement and start into production again. He got with the Hadorf people, who also sent a man here. Hadorf bought the building on Water Street that Automatic had been in, which incidentally formerly had been the Bundy Time Recorder Company, and that was where IBM originated. And by 1913, Link had reorganized the thing, and it became the Link Piano Company. There's the building, Bundy Time Recorder, and notice it's only 4 stories right now. Later on, there was 2 more stories added onto the top. That picture's from around 1900. Here's another Automatic musical company ad. Pays bigger dividends than a bank. Well, and it shows their piano again with the bin for the roll underneath the key bed. And they were quite successful for a while until, they got in trouble. Here's something really interesting that Automatic issued. That's a watch fob. And it says electric pianos on it, and it shows the Automatic Musical Instrument Company piano with the roll bin, and if you look closely, you can see the mandolin attachment inside the glass there. On the back it says Automatic Musical Company, Binghamton, New York. I suppose they gave these to dealers and servicemen. It's the only one that I have ever seen, probably the only one in existence, but a really neat artifact. Here's an early Link, as done by Link. Again, you can see the top has been added on, and it's a Hadorf piano. But now it's 1913, styles have changed, and they're starting to put stained glass on the front of them. That's probably the only one that exists of that style. Here's the inside. And into the Link era, they were still saying Automatic Musical Instrument Company inside them because there was a lot of pianos still in the factories that had been made for Automatic and hadn't been assembled and shipped. So into 1914, a Link still had the Automatic designation inside it. Here's a Link Style R from 1913. Again, the Mission style was fancy. Beautiful stained glass with the parrot on it. And in that era, all coin pianos had to have hanging lamps. So this has got those 2 little lanterns on them. Seeburg, Cremona, and other companies used them too. Same lamp from the same supplier. 1916 saw a design change, and this was the common Link keyboard piano. A little bit taller. Roll mechanism was redesigned a little bit. And here's the inside of that. This is a walnut case. And you note on the top, there's the endless roll that Link used, redesigned so as to not infringe with the Peerless patents. And this one contains violin pipes, flute pipes, a tambourine with both shake and beat, and a snare drum. And in there, you can't see it, there's also a wood block. Another picture of the same style of piano that's has a xylophone instead of the pipes. But you can easily see the endless roll, which was a Link feature. No one else used that in the later years. They seemed to prefer it, and the operators preferred it too, because with an endless roll, there's no pause for rewind. Remember, a coin piano is not making money when it rewinds a roll. This is endless. It just keeps going and going and going, so there's no dead, no money pause. A little bit difficult to change the roll, but if you know how to do it, it's not hard. Here's that one with the pipes again, a beautiful walnut case. Another example of the custom cases that they made. This a lot was a creation of a fella in the Link staff called, his name was George Snow. He was a master woodworker who had started out as a carver and worked on a New York State Capitol building for many years, but he came to Link in 1916 when they made the design change. But this is quite an elaborate case here, and apparently that's the only one of that style in existence. Here's what turned the Style M from automatic turned into was the Link cabinet piano. Probably more of these were made than the keyboard machines, going from the serial numbers that we see today. Most all of these had clear glass in them. This one in the advertising shows a stained glass window. I've only ever seen one with that window in it, and who knows where that one is. That was in an auction in Virginia 40 years ago. Here's what they usually look like. They have xylophones in these cabinet machines. Kind of hard to see in this picture, but this has a xylophone in it. Here's the last design of the cabinet piano. That's a 2EX from around 1927. And of course, like other manufacturers, Link had wall boxes. This would be placed around booths in a restaurant or on a bar, and you could drop a nickel and start the piano over on the other side of the room without having to get up and walk over there. Close-up of the roll mechanism. As the roll is feeding in, you can see how it dries with the heavy roller here on a rubber roller, pushes the paper in. Now this paper never gets tangled. Everybody thinks, oh, watch this self-destruct, ha ha ha. It doesn't do it. Somehow it finds its way through the bin and comes out the other end. It's amazing. Here's the Link piano in 1914. You see the top 2 floors have been added, and this building existed till around 1934 when a flood took it out. It was damaged beyond repair and it was taken down. And the Link employees, this picture is from around 1925. There's numerous people. The guy with a big smile right in the center is Tom Bradley, who was the chief inspector. And from what I've been told, no piano left the factory without his approval. He checked everything. Standing on the far left with a smile on his face is George Thayer, who was the factory manager and designed the horizontal endless rolled system that Link used for all those years, and a lot of other technical innovations. Here's something we found in a pipe organ we're restoring. Jessica Wilmot signed it July 13th, 1925, date it was assembled, and she was in that last picture there. You'll see her again here in another picture. The 2 fellas who arranged 90% of the rolls that Link used were Ray Dio on the left and Bill Sabin on the right. Both very talented people. Sabin played in Sousa's band at one time and led orchestras around Binghamton. He led the Vaudeville Orchestra in the Capitol Theater. He played the violin as his main instrument. He was a left-handed fellow and also played several other instruments, but he did not play keyboards. Dio did play keyboard and was actually a very good pianist. We've met people come to TechWorks that remember him playing back years ago. And the way they did the rolls was they laid them out on a drawing board. And these guys were good enough that they could see exactly what the roll was going to do by the holes that were in it. And they laid them out on a drawing board. They were hand punched out, and it went through the perforating machine. And bingo, you had a fine music roll. Dio was particularly skillful in snappy, lilting arrangements. You'll hear some of that later. It's rare that an arranger gets credit on a roll label, but here is a Link roll label, and it gives William D. Sabin arranging credits for the first 5 pieces, and then the next 5. It says by George D. Bernard, but it doesn't say that he arranged that. I would assume either Dio or Sabin arranged it. But who knows? It's been lost to history. But there we go, Bill Sabin. Now, as far as I know, we've never found a roll that Ray Dio was credited on. Well, it came to the end in 1932. The Depression hit him. Radio was getting popular. Nobody was buying coin pianos anymore. Movies had gone to talkies, so the organs that they were building were not needed anymore in the theaters to accompany the silent movies. And the whole place was auctioned off. They started an auto repair business just to keep the guys busy in the late years. So you see 5,000 pairs of headlight lenses, 10 cents a pair. Brake lining, 10 cents a foot. And thousands and thousands of things. Many, many pianos got sold for $5 a piece. Some of them are still kicking around Binghamton, by the way. This is Ray Dio and his 2 sons, Ennis in the back and Howard in the front at his house. Around 1925 or so. Just thought we'd throw that in. And after the Link Piano Company went out, Dio got one of the perforating machines and started producing Link rolls, which he did until around 1938. He called it Dio, D-E-O. He took the Y out of his name, but these are 2 of the rolls that he did late in the operation. You can tell by the titles, there's 1930 stuff. And by this time, he wasn't even perforating the rolls. He was having the Clark Orchestra Roll Company do it, and they're actually QRS arrangements. But he did keep supplying rolls until the late 30s. Ed Link had worked in his father's factory during his vacations from school in the summer and became thoroughly versed in piano and organ construction. And the guy was a mechanical genius. So one day, the story goes that he sat down on a pipe organ reservoir of an organ they were assembling to test in the factory, and somebody turned the pressure on, and the bellows inflated, and Ed, being more interested in airplanes at the time and had had a few rides in the early aircraft, he said, hey, this feels like being up in an airplane. And if you've ever been in a light plane, you have the feeling that air is supporting you. Well, gave him an idea. And he started putting player piano and pipe organ components together and building a trainer of sorts, which was originally intended as an amusement park device. You could actually teach a guy to fly with this or see if a guy had the ability to fly without crashing an expensive plane. So the first version of this was the red box because it was painted red. And it was basically just a climb and dive and bank. It didn't have a turn yet. And this was sold as an amusement park device, but they also started to sell a few as trainers. They were made in the piano factory before the floods, and it struggled on. Ed Link was also making his living with an airplane flying. That's the blue box that was made in another factory in Gaines Street and later up at Hillcrest in North Binghamton. Chanute Field, Rantoul, Illinois, where I spent some time when I was in the Air Force, had 100 Link trainers, and they were training pilots for World War II. They built 10,000 trainers for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the English, all kinds. There were even some in Australia. That little idea sitting on the organ bellows really turned into something. This is the Link Old Timers, and you can see the blue box in the background. On the left is Ed Link, and most of these employees are former piano company employees. The fellow right next to Ed Link is George Thayer, who never actually worked for Link but worked with all these people. Jesse Wilmot is next, and then George Snow. And just above George Snow is Ray Dio. An interesting picture there that he kept a lot of the former piano company employees working on these trainers all these years. This is from 1945, so they'd already been making the trainers for 10 years. Things got so busy during World War II that they farmed out a lot of the components for the Link trainers to other piano companies. This is taken to Gulbranson Company in Chicago, and the fellow there is adjusting a turn motor for the Link trainer. As you can see, it's 2 player piano motors back to back, one for left, one for right. It turns the whole mechanism around, so now you can steer it as well as climb and dive and bank. Art Reblitz dug this and some other very interesting pictures up from the Chicago archives. What did they do after the war? All of a sudden, there's no more demand for trainers, and he's got a whole factory full of skilled woodworkers. Well, Ed Link liked to go and fly his Grumman Widgeon, which is what this airplane is, out to remote lakes in Michigan and Canada and go camping. And so he designed a portable take-apart canoe called the Link Canoe. And you can see them assembling the canoe on top of the Widgeon here on a lake. And they sold a lot of these, but they're really, it was no big money maker. They still exist. They still turn up on eBay occasionally. The way it was watertight was after the frame was assembled, then there was a big canvas bag that stretched over the whole thing that made it watertight. There's the Link Canoe logo. You can take it with you, and as you see, the lady's holding those 2 green bags with the disassembled canoe in there. Now, those things weigh 60 pounds each. So, yeah, it's portable, but not by today's standards. Another thing that Ed Link did in the 1930s while he was developing the trainer, he had to make money somehow, so he came up with a Link Sky Sign. And what that is an airplane with these matrix letters attached to the wings and a player piano type roll mechanism that controls electrical contacts. It lights up light bulbs and spells out, like this is Spalding's Bread, which is a local bread name. It'd fly around at dusk over towns where people never saw an airplane, but you heard it, and there's the sign lighting up, buy Spalding's Bread or Energetic Shoes or something like that. He did that, just a real interesting thing. At one time, he had 3 planes flying around like that. And it was quite a novelty for a few years, but that was kind of a transition between the pianos and the trainers, was this flying sign. Ed Link and Harvey Rail at Clark's Trading Post back in the 70s with a steam-powered fire engine. It's an interesting picture. And Harvey and Marion Rail playing Percy Granger's piano. Just a kind of an interesting picture. Here's a demonstration of how the Link trainer morphed from player piano parts. If you're familiar with the inside of a player piano, there's always an air motor that drives the roll. So this is a motor that turns the trainer when you kick the rudder pedals. And as you can see, it's just 2 player piano motors back to back. They're actually Pratt Reed motors out of a Pratt Reed piano, and one is for left and one is for right, drives a belt which turns the whole mechanism around. It all works on vacuum, just like a player piano. All right, anybody interested in, or familiar with pipe organ mechanics can see that this mechanism, called a rough air generator, is nothing but pallet valves just like you'd find in a pipe organ. And what happens is when the instructor turns on this little motor, it turns these cams which open the valves which dump air, atmosphere into a line that should have vacuum. and the training machine reacts by jumping and bouncing around like it was in turbulent air. And it can be adjusted to make it even more turbulent by opening the pallet valves a little bit farther. So it's just one of the many total tie-ins with the piano and organ industry that found its way into the Link Trainer. Some of the innovations that Link used are quite unique. To get around a patent on coin mechanisms that Mills Novelty Company had, they designed this little thing here, and that's the coin box. And the way it works is, when you drop a nickel into the slot, up here there's two contacts, and the nickel hits the contacts and completes an electrical circuit which energizes this magnet here. Okay, now when that happens, the armature trips this switch, the knife switch closes, and the motor starts. When the knife switch closes, it shorts out the magnets so that there's not current flowing through them all the time, so they don't burn up. And when as soon as the vacuum builds up, there's a pneumatic that collapses and pushes the nickel off the contacts and down into the box, which is here. And it's like this, all right? So the magnet's going to trip. So we saw the coin mechanism here. There's the original motor, General Electric, from around 1910. This box is a reservoir for the pressure to blow the pipes. I'm sure you watched all this carefully here. The vacuum and pressure pump, it's using the exhaust from the vacuum side of the pump to provide pressure for the pipes. And this is the player mechanism. It's mounted underneath the key bed of the piano, unlike most player pianos where it's in the top. There's a reason for that, because originally these pianos were not designed to have player mechanisms, and they had to use what space that was available, so they wound up under the key bed. And here's it. Aha, see? Each individual pneumatic is removable by taking two screws and a tube out, so if something goes wrong, you can get a new one from the factory and in a couple of minutes replace it, unlike a lot of them where you had to tear everything apart. Over on the other side is the speed control, which you can't see from here, but we'll get a good shot of that in just a minute. Kind of hard to see, but here's the tempo or speed control, and what it consists of is a conical shaped drive roller, and this other roller is a friction drive. As this rotates, it turns here, and if you want to change the speed, you can slide this brass friction drive in or out on its shaft, and of course the farther it's towards us,
the faster it goes because of the larger circumference of the cone, and push it the other way, it goes slower because of the smaller circumference. Another neat thing.
Now, you may have heard a tinny kind of sound come from the piano from time to time. That's the mandolin rail. It's a separate attachment in these later pianos, and what it consists of is a row of tabs with a little steel extension on the bottom. The hammer, when the mandolin rail is in place, hits the tab, which drives it into the strings and gives you that tinny sound. Hammers being made of felt normally give you the regular piano sound.